There is a difference between controversy and reckoning. On March 1st, 2026, dressage once again finds itself at a fault line. An Olympic icon, a World Cup arena, a short video clip, 8 minutes long, and a horse whose body language has now been replayed millions of times. Charlotte Dujardin, 3-time Olympic gold medalist, gold ambassador for British dressage, one of the most recognizable riders in the history of the sport, is at the center of a renewed welfare storm, following footage from the Amsterdam World Cup showing her riding her mare alive and kicking, in what critics describe as a tense, compressed frame, visible spur use, and sustained rein contact. No elimination, no yellow card, no formal sanction, and yet the reaction has been immediate and intense. Veterinarians have spoken publicly. Welfare advocates have dissected slow motion clips. Fans are asking hard questions. And critics are now openly questioning reinstatement policies and rule enforcement at the highest levels of the sport. But to understand why this moment feels so different, we have to investigate what the video actually shows, what the science says, what the rules allow, and what the sport may be avoiding. So what happened? The Amsterdam World Cup has long been a prestigious stop in the dressage calendar. Bright lights, packed stands, a test designed to showcase elasticity, power, and harmony. In this particular round, Dujardin and Alive and Kicking delivered a technically competent performance. Scores were competitive, movements were executed with decent precision. But shortly after the ride, short clips began circulating online. In them, viewers pointed to a consistently shortened rein length with minimal visible give, repeated spur engagement during collected work, a neck position some described as overcompressed, tail swishing during transitions, momentary head elevation and resistance. To some observers, these were normal micro adjustments in elite sport. That's sad that people think that. To others, they were classical indicators of equine conflict behavior. And that distinction is everything. So what's the science of equine conflict behavior? 10 years ago, most of this debate would have been subjective. Today, it isn't. In the past decade, veterinarian researchers and equine behavior scientists have increasingly studied what they call conflict behaviors, subtle signs indicating discomfort, stress, or confusion in ridden horses. These include persistent tail swishing, unrelated to insects, repeated opening of the mouth, jaw crossing, grinding teeth, ears pinned backward during exertion, head tossing under rein pressure, irregular rhythm in moments of restraint. Critically, these behaviors are not dramatic breakdowns. They are cumulative indicators. One tail swish is meaningless. 10 tail swishes in 2 minutes may not be. This is where the Amsterdam footage becomes controversial. Several veterinary professionals reviewing the clips have stated that Alive and Kicking appeared to display multiple mild conflict behaviors in sequence during collected passages and transitions. Supporters counter. Collection is biomechanically demanding, elite people say. Micro-resistance does not equal mistreatment. But modern welfare science asks a different question. If a horse repeatedly signals discomfort, why is the signal ignored? And perhaps more importantly, should scoring systems penalize it? The rulebook versus reality. The FEI rulebook prohibits abuse of the aids, excessive force, hyperflexion maintained through aggressive riding, blood on the horse, clear signs of distress. But here is the uncomfortable truth. It is not written to address subtle tension. Stewards are trained to intervene in visible cases of abuse. They are not instructed to reward submission and harmony. But what defines harmony? If a horse performs every movement technically correct, but shows small repeated resistant signs. Shouldn't that reduce the score? In practice, it rarely does. And that is where critics argue the system fails. Because what wins is not always what welfare science would define as ideal. One of the most discussed aspects of the Amsterdam ride is the rein length. Slow motion footage shows a steady, short contact during highly collected movements. The nose is way behind the vertical, mouth open, etc. Now, short reins are not inherently abusive. Collection requires connection. But critics argue that prolonged compression without visible give can increase stress in the jaw and make the horse behind the vertical. The FEI has guidelines about hyperflexion, but the definition relies heavily on visible overbending behind the vertical. Modern tension often occurs with legal parameters. The neck may be technically in front of the vertical. The pole may not be the absolute highest point, and yet the frame can still be tight. The rulebook struggles in that gray space, and gray space is where most modern controversies live. Another focal point in the Amsterdam clip is spur engagement. Elite riders use spur as precision tools. We'll have a whole nother video on that. But the public perception of repeated spur activation during visible tension is deeply uncomfortable. The investigative question isn't whether spurs are legal. They are. The question is, if a horse appears resistant, does increased spur use escalate pressure instead of resolving confusion? Veterinary biomechanics research suggests that repeated simultaneous rein and leg pressure can create conflicting signals. When the hand restricts and the leg drives, the horse may display conflict behaviors. That does not automatically equal cruelty, but it does raise a performance philosophy question. Is the horse responding willingly or complying under pressure? And in a sport that defines itself as a partnership, that distinction matters. Although Dujardin has not been sanctioned in the specific instance, the broader discussion has shifted towards reinstatement standards in elite sports. Critics argue if riders face welfare controversy, even without formal penalties, should there be structured review before full return to Olympic-level sport? Should additional education, audits, or oversight be mandatory? Or is performance alone sufficient proof of readiness? Currently, reinstatement processes across equestrian sport are largely administrative. Serve suspension, complete required education, return. There is no standardized independent welfare audit of training practices. No ongoing behavioral monitoring requirement. No published transparency report. In an arena where public trust is fragile, the absence is increasingly questioned. The Amsterdam controversy isn't just internal, it's external. Dressage's Olympic future depends on public legitimacy, and public legitimacy depends on perceived welfare. The average Olympic viewer does not analyze half-pass angles, they analyze expression. If a horse looks tense, the sport looks suspect. And the IOC has shown increasing willingness to scrutinize sports that appear ethically outdated. The investigation concern here is systemic. If top athletes repeatedly generate welfare debates without rule consequences, does the sport appear self-policing or self-protective? The perception matters. Sponsors watch, broadcasters watch, Olympic committees watch. Elite dressage exists in a performance ecosystem. Owners invest millions, breeders expect visibility, sponsors demand podium finishes, federations chase medals, and riders carry the weight of expectation. Pressure does not excuse poor welfare, but pressure explains intensity. The investigative question becomes, has the culture of winning subtly normalized tension? Are judges unconsciously rewarding extravagance over ease? Are riders incentivizing to compress more, drive more, push more, because bigger movement scores higher? If so, the issue is not one rider, it is systemic.